So you want to know the best melee loadout in the game? Well, you've come to the right place. Today we will be taking a look at some of the best armour, weapons and accessories for endgame melee characters. As some of us know already, the best melee armour in the game is the solar flare armour. To craft the whole set, you will need a total of 45 solar fragments and 144 luminite. To get the materials to craft this armour set, you will most likely need to defeat the Celestial Pillars and the Moon Lord twice in order to obtain enough luminite and solar fragments to craft the whole set of melee armour. The solar flare armour gives you a base defense of 78, 17% increased melee critical hit chance, 22% increased melee damage and 15% increased movement speed and melee speed. One downside to this armour is that enemies are more likely to target you, but this only applies if you are playing with other players. This armour set also has a shield, which will give you a 30% damage reduction. It also has 3 stages, which each take 5 seconds to charge. This is similar to the pre-Moon Lord melee armour, the Beetle armour. The shield also allows you to use a dash ability, which will damage enemies when you hit them. As we are using melee armour, we obviously want to have good melee weapons too. So I've made a list which contains some of the best melee weapons in the game. The meowmere, the Star Wrath, the Daybreak, the Terrarian and the Solar Eruption. These are all brilliant endgame melee weapons which all possess high damage potential. The meowmere is a great sword which has an 11% drop chance from the Moon Lord when you kill him. This weapon fires cat-faced projectiles which can pierce through enemies and has a base damage of 200, but over time this damage will increase to 244. The projectiles bounce 4 times before dissipating on the 5th. The best modifier for the meowmere is legendary. Moving on to the Star Wrath, this is a great weapon which is also dropped by the Moon Lord with an 11% chance. The Star Wrath shoots star projectiles to wherever your cursor is. It has a base damage of 110, but the star projectiles will do 220 damage each. This weapon is great against hordes of enemies and bosses such as Skeleton Prime and the Moon Lord. The best modifier for this weapon is legendary. The Terrarian is a yo-yo which has an 11% chance to be dropped by the Moon Lord. This weapon spawns small green projectiles which infinitely pierces enemies. This weapon has a base damage of 190, which means it's great against all bosses and enemies in Terraria. When you use the yo-yo bag accessory with the Terrarian, this weapon becomes very overpowered because the yo-yo bag allows you to spawn and use 2 Terrarians instead of just 1. It has the highest damage per second out of all the melee weapons, especially when you use it with the yo-yo bag. The projectiles also home into enemies, which makes it quite hard to miss. The best modifier for this yo-yo is godly. The Solar Eruption is a great choice for melee characters as it has a great damage per second, can pierce through blocks and multiple enemies all at the same time. This weapon is crafted with 18 solar fragments at an ancient manipulator, which is dropped by the lunatic cultist boss. This weapon deals 105 damage upon impact and inflicts the Daybroken debuff, which deals 25 damage per second. The ability for this weapon to pierce through blocks makes it very easy to kill the Moon Lord, hordes of enemies and the mechanical bosses, especially the Destroyer. If you're looking for the best performance out of this weapon, the best modifier is godly. Some of the other weapons you may want to include in your melee loadout is the Daybreak and the Vampire Knives. The Daybreak is the counterpart to the Solar Eruption and can be crafted with 18 solar fragments. Just like the Solar Eruption, as an ancient manipulator. This weapon is pretty good, although it's not as good as the Solar Eruption. Although this weapon has the ability to stack the Daybroken debuff on enemies and bosses, it still does not out DPS the Solar Eruption. The Solar Eruption is much better at dealing with multiple enemies as the Daybreak doesn't have any penetrating abilities. This makes it not very efficient for defeating the Destroyer because it can't penetrate multiple segments of the boss at once. Another one of the weapons you may want to use is the Vampire Knives. This weapon has the ability to regenerate your health as you damage enemies. It can be found in the Crimson chest in the dungeon, and it has a base damage of 31. This weapon can be extremely useful if you need to quickly regenerate some health if you can't use any health potions. But this will be quite unlikely as the solar armour is pretty good at protecting you. So moving on to accessories, I recommend the solar wings as they allow very fast and high flight. They also have a very good flight time, which means you'll be able to fly for longer without having to touch the floor. This can be useful if you want to fly over dangerous areas or if you just want to get somewhere very quickly. They are crafted with 14 solar fragments and 10 luminite bars. The yo-yo bag is a great accessory to have, especially if you use the terrarian yo-yo often. As I mentioned earlier, the yo-yo bag allows you to spawn in 2 yo-yos at once, which means double the damage. The celestial shell turns you into a werewolf at night and a fish monster when you enter the water. This gives you the ability to move around and swim very fast in water. It also gives you a minor increase to all stats. The Ankh shield grants 4 defense, immunity to knockback and fire blocks. This shield also gives you immunity to most debuffs, which can be extremely useful as many enemies and bosses will not be able to inflict debuffs on you anymore. The Frostspark boots allow you to run very fast and give you extra mobility on ice. It also gives you a 7% increased movement speed, which can be handy as a melee character. If you want a little extra damage, you can use accessories such as the Warrior's Emblem, the Destroyer's Emblem, the Fire Gauntlet, the Avenger's Emblem, and the Mechanical Glove. These accessories will significantly boost your damage, almost doubling it. Let me know your favourite Terraria weapons and accessories down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on a future upload. I hope this video helped you out, and I'll see you in the next one.